Victory!
I am Hassan, host of Your Story. Tartaria's real weapons were not swords. Subscribe channel for more updates.
The thing that started all of this was a translation note. Not a discovery, not a revelation. A single bracketed annotation in the footnotes of an 18th century French military logistics document that I almost didn't read because it appeared on the page I had already decided wasn't relevant to what I was looking for at the time. I was working through colonial-era troop movement records from Central Asia, trying to understand supply chain organization in pre-industrial military campaigns for a project that had nothing to do with Tartaria, nothing to do with giants, and nothing to do with anything I'm about to tell you. The footnote flagged a recurring phrase in the original French text. The phrase was «gens extraordinaires». The translator had rendered it as the Extraordinary Labor Corps, which sounds unremarkable until you read the footnote itself, which stated that extraordinaire, in this context, appeared to carry a physical rather than qualitative meaning. Not extraordinary as in exceptional, extraordinary as in outside the ordinary scale of the human body. I read that footnote 3 times. Then I told myself the translator was being colorful, closed the document, and went to make coffee. I came back 20 minutes later and opened it again. I don't entirely know why. Something about the phrase had snagged in the part of my mind that processes things that don't fit neatly, and it wouldn't release. The labor corps in question was being transported in what the document described as reinforced conveyances. Standard military wagons were documented elsewhere in the same record set using entirely different language. These conveyances were reinforced specifically. The document noted to accommodate the dimensions inhabituelles, the unusual dimensions of the workers being moved. I want to be honest about what I thought at that point. I thought it was most likely a reference to heavy equipment, siege machinery perhaps, or large caliber weapons. Military logistics documents frequently describe equipment in terms that sound like they refer to people. That is a completely reasonable interpretation of what I was reading, and I held on to it for several weeks. But the document also described feeding schedules, and those feeding schedules, when I finally worked through the quantities, described a caloric requirement per individual unit of the labor corps that was roughly 4 to 5 times the documented daily ration for a standard French soldier of the same period. That is not siege machinery. Machinery does not eat. Let me tell you what the mainstream historical understanding says about the period and region I was looking at, because I think it matters to establish where the official record stands before I show you where it bends. The 18th and early 19th centuries in Central Asia are understood as a period of competing imperial expansion. Russian, Chinese, Persian, and various successor states of earlier empires, including the fragmenting remains of what some historians cautiously label the Tartar administrative zone. The dominant academic consensus treats Tartaria as a loosely applied geographic designation rather than a unified civilization, a geographic label that European mapmakers used to describe the interior of Asia before reliable surveys existed. Most historians are careful to say that Tartaria does not represent a single, coherent empire with centralized governance. They say this calmly, with evidence, and I respected that argument when I first encountered it. The conventional account also says straightforwardly that the large humanoid skeletons found periodically across Central Asian, North American, and European excavations throughout the 19th century are the product of misidentification, exaggeration, and, in some cases, deliberate fraud. The Smithsonian's formal position is that no authenticated giant skeletal remains exist in any accredited collection. That position is clearly stated and consistently maintained, and I want to acknowledge something about that position. It is not without basis. The history of giant bone claims is genuinely contaminated by hoaxes. The Cardiff Giant, various 19th century newspaper fabrications, carnival exhibitions built around manufactured bones. The human appetite for the extraordinary has produced a long record of manufactured evidence, and responsible skepticism about giant claims is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition from a legitimate historical record. I held all of that in mind. I held it carefully. And then I found the second document, which came from a completely different archive, in a completely different country, written in a completely different language, describing something that the French logistics record had no way of anticipating. It was a Russian administrative dispatch from 1743, a routine internal communication between two regional governors in what is now Siberia. The subject was a labor dispute, specifically a dispute about the management of workers described in the original Russian as velikani rabotniki, which translates without ambiguity as giant workers. Not a metaphor, not a colloquial term, a direct administrative designation applied to a specific category of human labor. I want to be precise about what made this document different from the claims I had already dismissed. It was not dramatic. It did not describe anything supernatural. It was bureaucratic correspondence about scheduling, compensation, and what the governor called the containment problem, a phrase used to describe difficulty keeping the giant workers within designated work zones during off hours. It read like any labor dispute. That is exactly what disturbed me about it. A hoax is designed to impress. A hoax uses dramatic language, extraordinary claims, and the architecture of revelation. This document was not designed to impress anyone. It was a governor complaining to another governor about a management problem with an unusual workforce. The mundane tone of it, the complete absence of wonder, suggested that whoever wrote it considered giant laborers to be an ordinary, if difficult, administrative category. Let me pause here and name the most obvious counter-argument, because I think you're entitled to hear it clearly stated. The word velikani in 18th century Russian was not always used literally. It appears in folk tradition as a synonym for powerful men, formidable adversaries, or men of exceptional physical presence. The governor may simply have been using an established colloquial term for a large and difficult workforce with no literal meaning intended. That argument is valid. I accepted it initially. What complicated it was the specific detail about containment. If velikani were purely figurative, a term for large, difficult men, the containment concern would read as a security or discipline problem, which is normal in any labor context. Standard fencing being insufficient is either a literal statement about physical scale, or it is a metaphor being extended in a direction that serves no rhetorical purpose in a private administrative letter. Private administrative letters are not written for rhetorical effect. They are written to solve problems. The fencing detail was in the document because the fencing was actually insufficient. And the reason it was insufficient was the reason the document called the workers velikani. Now let me show you where the pattern begins to accumulate, because this is where individual documents stop being curiosities and start being something harder to dismiss. Within 18 months of finding those first two records, I had located 6 more from different countries, different centuries, and different institutional contexts, all describing what appeared to be organized giant labor systems. A Portuguese colonial record from the 1600s described workers of statura prodigiosa, prodigious stature, being used in the construction of fortifications in coastal West Africa, with a specific notation that the workers required separate feeding arrangements from the general labor pool. The document was filed under routine construction logistics, not under anything that suggested its author considered the workers remarkable. A Chinese administrative record from the late Ming Dynasty referenced a class of laborers designated in the original text by a character combination that sinologists translate as body workers of the northern mountains, a designation that appears in no other context in the broader archive and carries physical connotations the standard scholarly footnote does not adequately address. The footnote simply describes it as a regional labor classification of unknown origin. An Ottoman military record from the early 17th century described the use of what the document called dev asker, giant soldiers, in the construction and defense of a specific mountain pass, with detailed provisioning notes that included quantities of food and water that, by the standard caloric calculations I had already applied to the French document, implied individuals of extraordinary physical mass. The Ottomans and the French had no documented administrative connection in this period. I want to stop here and acknowledge something important. What I have described so far is a pattern, not proof. Patterns can emerge from coincidence, from shared mythological frameworks that influenced administrative language across cultures, or from the simple fact that large people have always existed and have always attracted disproportionate historical attention. None of these documents constitutes verified physical evidence of a giant labor system. But here is where the pattern shifts from interesting to something I found harder to set aside. In 4 of the 8 documents I had now collected, there was a consistent additional element, one I had not been looking for and did not notice until I began cross-referencing them directly. All 4 described a change, a transition, a point at which, if these labor records describe a real population, the population of beings significantly larger than standard humans being used as a workforce across multiple continents, across multiple centuries, by multiple competing civilizations. What does that tell us about the relationship between that population and the civilizations that employed them? The records do not describe cooperation. They describe management. They describe containment problems, provisioning, logistics, and the enforcement of work zone restrictions. They describe, in the dry administrative language of governance, something that looks unmistakably like exploitation. Not partnership, not alliance. The management of a population that was too large to ignore and apparently not powerful enough at the institutional level to resist being managed. I want to be careful here, because this is the point at which the evidence becomes thinner and the inference becomes heavier. I cannot prove from administrative logistics documents that a coordinated multi-civilizational system existed for the use and eventual elimination of a giant human population. The coordination problem is this. If each of these administrative records reflects an independent local practice, different cultures independently discovering that large humans were useful for heavy labor, there is no reason for the language of removal to be so consistent. Natural, independent conclusions do not produce uniform euphemisms. The French phrase for ordered liquidation and the Portuguese phrase for instructions that need not be detailed are expressing the same thing in the same way. That uniformity across unconnected institutions is harder to explain than any single document. What would explain it is not a meeting, not a council, not a named conspiracy. What would explain it is a shared understanding, a common awareness distributed across enough institutional levels and enough geographic distance that what was being done to this population was something that documentation would not survive well. The silence organized itself around a shared knowledge of what the silence was protecting. That is a different kind of coordination, and it is far more stable than any conspiracy that requires ongoing, active management. Let me tell you what I think the final war described in certain fragmentary Tartarian records actually was. I want to be very clear that this is interpretive. that I am reading between lines that are already faint. But the picture that assembles itself from the materials I've described is this. At some point in the period roughly between the late 17th and early 19th centuries, the giant population, whatever its true nature and scale, stopped being manageable. Something changed. The containment problems described in the Russian document from 1743 may represent an early sign of that change. The Portuguese administrator's reference to instructions that need not be detailed may represent a later stage of it. What I think happened, based on the accumulation of removal language across 8 documents from 4 continents, is that the institutions managing this population reached a shared conclusion, not through communication, but through parallel experience, that the population had to be eliminated rather than controlled. The reason I use the word war for this conclusion is that the removal language is not the language of disease management or natural decline. It is the language of active termination of something requiring organized effort, military-level logistics, and enough institutional sensitivity to require administrative silence. You do not write instructions that need not be detailed here about a workforce that simply died of illness. You write, I've spent a long time trying to find an exit from that conclusion. I want to find one. The alternative, that multiple advanced civilizations across centuries and continents engaged in the organized exploitation and eventual extermination of a giant human population and then coordinated their silence about it, is not a comfortable thing to sit with. I would prefer a simpler explanation. I have looked for one carefully and honestly. What I have found instead is more documents. A Spanish missionary account from the Philippines, dated 1678, describes large workers being used in the construction of a coastal fortification, and notes in passing that such workers were brought from the interior by arrangement with certain northern intermediaries, suggesting a supply chain, not a local occurrence. An English East India Company record from 1791 references the final disposal of a category of laborers that had been used in mine excavation with a cost entry for the disposal that is too large for standard labor release or dismissal. I don't know what to do with any of this. I have told you that honestly throughout, and I will tell you again at the end. I am not a person who came to this material looking for confirmation of a predetermined belief. I came looking for a translation error and found instead a pattern that has not resolved itself into anything I can cleanly explain or cleanly dismiss. If you have followed this to the end, you are sitting with something similar. I imagine not certainty, not proof, but the specific discomfort of a pattern that is too consistent to be noise and too diffuse to be crime. The documents are real. The language is what it is. The silence surrounding them has persisted for between 2 and 4 centuries, depending on which record you begin with. There is a war in here somewhere, not a recorded one, not a war with a name, a date, a winning side, and a treaty. A war that ended in administrative silence, in phrases like permanent resolution and instructions that need not be detailed. A war whose conclusion we are still living inside of, in a world built on top of whatever it replaced. I don't know who fought it. I don't know exactly when it ended. I don't know whether the beings on the losing side were giants in the literal sense, or something else for which we have not yet found the right word. What I know is that something was removed from the world, and the removal was careful, and the silence that followed it has lasted long enough that we now call the absence normal. Somewhere in an archive I haven't found yet, in a language I may not read, in a document filed under a category that makes it invisible to the searches I know how to run, there is a record that describes what the final order looked like, who gave it, or what institution issued it, or whether there was a moment when someone wrote down the actual reason.